My name is John Saxon. I was an operations supervisor at the Honeysuckle Creek Tracking Station during the Apollo missions. Honeysuckle was one of 3 tracking stations set up around the world in preparation for the Apollo missions. And Honeysuckle was the centre for Apollo tracking support in the Southern Hemisphere, here in the ACT. It was a glorious location. It's right out in the bush. It's a beautiful place. And it was a wonderful place to go and work because you could come up the hill, going through the bush, looking at the wildlife, and then you'd step through the door and you'd be in a little city up there in the bush. We didn't have an enormous number of female technicians. In fact, I'm not sure we had any female technicians, but we did have female equipment operators. It was pretty chauvinistic in those days, but we were more than happy to work alongside female operators and technicians because they certainly lightened up the day.
Oh, my name's David Cooke. I was the receiver engineer, or electronics engineer at Parkes at the time, and my particular job was to look after the receiving system, which resided mainly up in the focus cabin. It was decided that there needed to be television coverage, and NASA at that time hadn't completed its one in Canberra, and so in this part of the world, our telescope would have been the biggest and most sensitive, so it was able to get a better picture than any other smaller receiver. Things that could go wrong were we could lose power, or something could go wrong with the control system. We obviously had electric power to make the receivers work, but if they were working and the telescope couldn't be driven, then the idea was to try to use crank handles to crank the telescope around the correct position so that it could be focused on the module. But fortunately that never happened. Well, I didn't have a lot to do with the media, but I know that they are very keen, and there was that occasion where we saw earlier with those people all dressed up in their ties, where there was a special occasion, media would be in there. But for the most part, I think, certainly John Bolton kind of discouraged too much activity, especially leading up to the shot. We didn't want to be distracted by too many people around.
30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I guess on the day of launch, we were all there like coiled springs, as we used to say. And I think, in retrospect, we were all a bit more keyed up with 11 than we were with perhaps some of the other missions. But not overly so. It was what we'd been training for a long time.
4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. Ready? Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Drift. Ready? Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Just before we actually saw the spacecraft, we had a visitor. John Gorton, the Prime Minister, came up with a large entourage. I have to say that some of us, me included, regarded it as somewhat of an intrusion, and we were not expecting to get diverted by such things on that particular day. We were so busy getting organised, ready for the pass when he went around, and I didn't say any words to him. Armstrong landed on the moon, and the theory was that him and Aldrin would take a rest for 8 hours before getting out of the spacecraft. They'd have a bit of a sleep. Now, I don't know about you, but if you just landed on the moon for the first time ever, I think your adrenaline would be going pretty well, and you wouldn't want to hang around trying to get to sleep. So Armstrong decided to go out early, and this, in fact, was the reason why Parkes did not get those very first pictures out to the world, because they actually couldn't see the moon with their antenna as we could at Honeysuckle.
I was standing watching the little green monitor oscilloscope and could see the module there and see the astronaut walking down. And I remember, I don't know who the operator was, but he'd obviously been on this project for a long time. This was the peak of the experience of the whole thing, what it was been for. And as the astronaut, as Neil Armstrong, stepped onto the moon, this chappie said, "Oh, how about that? How about that?"
Yeah, I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I had told my wife that exactly when he was due to step out onto the moon, and my wife was at home with 2 young children, and I didn't get a chance to ring her up and tell her, look, he's getting out early. And as she said later, if it wasn't on Humphrey Bear, if it wasn't announced there, then she didn't know it was happening, and she didn't actually watch it in real time. But it didn't worry her too much, because she knew she'd be seeing it again in the evening. One thing that could not be simulated prior to the mission was what those pictures were going to be like. Nobody knew how much reflection there would be from the surface, how contrasty the picture would be, and Ed was there giving the picture a gentle tweak. I suppose if you'd stopped and thought that maybe 25% of the Earth's population was watching the results of those tweaks, he might have been a little more concerned. The raw pictures coming from the moon were only 10 frames a second. The way that it was converted to the standard 25 frames a second or 30 frames a second for America was by pointing a camera at a monitor. It seems a very crude system these days, but that's exactly how it was done. There was a camera looking at this monitor, which was set up for this slow scan television from the lunar module.
The whole thing was being recorded on these big tape recorders, and so these tape machines were spinning around, and every few minutes or whatever the time was, they would take one off and put another one on. This was all to record it. They were the ones that were stored and now can't be found.
The television, I should emphasise, was not our highest priority. The highest priority was the biomedical data and the backpack data, the astronaut safety data. The television came quite well down the list. Naturally, we paid it some attention, but we were not really as worried about the television as making sure that other data did not go astray.
That evening, I think the families were invited to come over, and so my wife and children came over with others, and those tapes were played back, and we could see again on the monitor exactly what had happened that day. I think it struck me mostly when I went outside after the pass was all over and we would cease tracking and looked up and saw the moon there, which was still in the sky, and I thought, well, how amazing is that? There are some people up there, and we helped do it. We helped put them there.
I guess it was a big moment, very big moment. I know in my log, which I still have, I noted the time to the second because we had a sweepstake going as to when he was going to actually step onto the lunar surface. And we really didn't have much time to contemplate the significance of it. It was something that was happening in the sequence that was necessary to happen for the next sequence to happen, and so on. We see a lot of pictures these days of people giving each other high fives when something significant happens, not to mention cigars. But I have to say there was none of that. On the two-man console, I don't think we ever shook hands. There was certainly no high fives. They weren't even invented in those days. It obviously did begin to sink in that something special had happened, but there was always the next day. There's 3 more days of that mission to go. I think it's only in retrospect after many years that you start to think, well, maybe that was something a bit special. It was certainly has been talked about as being a defining moment in the 20th century, and we were just incredibly lucky to have taken some part in it.